Hi, I'm Jacqueline.
And I'm Courtney, and this is Caffeinated Crimes.
Is it June?
I thought you were being like, is it Caffeinated
No.
Crimes?
Is it really? Are you sure? We've only been
Is
doing this
it?
for like 4 years. I don't know.
But yes, this should be
This
coming
is
out on June 4th.
Happy June. Happy
Happy
Pride Month.
June. Happy Pride
Um,
Month.
Happy almost summer officially. If you go like by like the actual season of summer that starts on like June
Mm-hmm.
21st or 2nd or
Second, maybe?
something like
Something like
that.
that.
I can never remember exactly if it's like the same date each time or if it's like
Yeah.
a sun thing where it like alters
Yeah,
in that
true.
week.
Kind of like how Easter was like hella early this year for some reason,
Yeah.
which
Yeah. Some
we looked up the reason and there is a reason. It's just, I don't know.
I just look at the calendar and okay, when
Yeah.
is Easter? Okay, perfect. That's all I need to know. Which I don't
Yeah.
think anyone, I mean like I guess like the summer equinox and the winter equinox, like people celebrate those. So I guess you need to know the date like for those
Yeah.
reasons. But other than that, it's just kind of it's summer when it's hot as shit outside. That's
That's
my
the thing. Like,
definition.
I guess like to me, it's like Memorial Day to Labor Day. Like that's
Yeah.
summer to
Yeah.
me, you
Yeah,
know? And
that
I
makes
feel like
sense.
that might just be like also like so many years being on like a school schedule that was like,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it started like August, May to August kind of just
Yeah.
feels like summer.
Yeah, that's true. I'm also nervous about my air conditioning this summer because it was only like, what, like 85 degrees today, and
Mm-hmm.
my AC was set to like 72, and it says it's 76 in my house. And I'm like, oh no, we're starting
Ooh,
this early. But
not
like my
off to
daughter's
a
baby
great
monitor
start.
says 68 in her room. So, because like we have a big, like, open,
Mm-hmm.
like our living room kitchen, is all like one area. So I think it just gets warmer in that area because it's like harder to like cool like a
Yeah.
large area. So I think it's like, and it doesn't feel that hot, but seeing the number scares me every time I walk by because I'm like, oh
Yeah.
no, is it gonna break?
Because I know, like, my parents' house too, it's like if you close the door on the bedrooms, like, it'll get cold in there.
Yeah.
Like, their bathroom will be so cold, but like the living room might not as much, just with like where the sun is and how like the sun beats down
Exactly.
and stuff. So,
Yeah. Yeah. So I guess we'll see what we're in for this summer, but
yeah.
it's gonna be hot either way.
If only we lived in like one of those places where like they don't even need AC, which not really. I still want AC. Even if I don't need it, I still want it, if
Yeah.
I'm
And I
being
feel like with
honest.
with global warming, like a lot of those places need AC now, but now it's just
Yeah,
not,
and that was like
as available.
when we went on the family vacation to like San Diego, like our house did not have
Mm-hmm.
AC because it was
Yeah,
like houses here don't have AC. And I was like, okay, but it's hot in here, especially too, because you're on a
exactly.
family vacation. You have to close your door. Like you're not getting
Yeah.
airflow. Like I can't sleep
Mm-hmm.
with the door open
Yeah.
with my not in-laws at that point. I mean, I knew them, but still it's weird. Like,
Yeah, you still want to sleep with the door
so
open.
the
Yeah.
problem was I'd wake up at like 6 a.m. and I'd be so sweaty, I couldn't go back to
Yeah.
sleep because I was
Yeah.
dying of heat.
Trying to sleep when it's just like super hot is
Mm-mm.
it's so bad.
And Kevin and I like try to keep our bedroom like so cold that
Mm-hmm.
now like when we go other places, like it's not as cold. Like, like when you're like
Yeah.
staying in someone's house and you're just like,
You're
it's
like,
so
I'm
hot in
sweating.
here. I'm
Yeah.
sweating.
Yeah, I feel that. And I also like it like really cold when I'm sleeping, but then like I have a child and I'm like, well, I'm gonna make sure that she's not too cold. And I try to like
Yeah.
figure out what that happy medium is. And then she sleeps like her dad with the blanket just fully over her head. And I'm like, I don't know how you do this, but I'm like, are you freezing? And that's why you sleep like this? Because you're like, I gotta cover all my extremities.
Yeah.
I don't know. We went on a walk this week at like noon, which was stupid anyway, because like it's hot and there's no shade and whatever. I may have underestimated how much a pregnant summer is gonna suck. Like, because I was
Mm,
like, it's not gonna be that bad. Like, I'm doing October. Like, by that point, it'll start to cool down, and I'm like, oh, it's May, and it's
it's hot.
especially because I live at the very top of a hill. So that last hill, like after
Yeah,
the walk, and you're
that hill,
mm,
you might be that lady who just walks the little up
up and down,
top.
up
You're
and down.
like, I'll go up the hill myself, but we ain't pushing no strollers
Yeah.
up there.
Well, usually when we walk together, like Andrew will push the stroller, and like I'll have the dogs because they I just hit my table. Sorry if you heard that. Because they can walk themselves. I don't have to have any extra
Hmm.
exertion. Which one of my neighbors like every other time I walk by, it tells me I need to get harnesses for my dog so they can pull the stroller up the hill. I was like, that is a good idea.
That's a genius idea. Except I
But
feel
so
like Rosie would sprint and Dolly would just like
she would
trot.
drag her. Yeah, she would
Yeah.
just like drag Dolly all up the hill. Yeah,
Yeah.
it would. Dolly and I'd be stuck at the bottom, and then Rosie would pull up the stroller by herself, is what would happen. But yeah, Andrew pushed Millie in the stroller all the way up to the top of the hill and was like halfway down our road and circled back to get me by the time I made it to the top of
Yeah.
the hill because I
I
was
mean,
like,
that's a
I gotta
pretty
take some
brutal
breaks.
hill, but especially when
Yeah,
you're gonna be more top heavy and it's gonna be
exactly.
hotter, like will be gonna be hard. Yeah. Like we went on a walk today, like after I worked out and I was wearing like pants and we were walking
Ugh.
and I was like, I'm dying.
It
I'm
was
dying.
very hot and very humid
And
today.
that was at
Like,
like 6. And I
yeah.
was still like, it's really hot.
Yeah, it's gonna be a long summer, but
Yeah. But yeah, very hot summer. But
yeah.
the apartment down the street has a pool. So Kevin and I are gonna try to break
Oh,
into that.
nice. Let me know how that
If you're
goes.
listening to this, no, we're not.
Nope, definitely not.
You don't know which apartment you are.
Well, we're gonna get another, big cheap baby pool again this summer. So if you want to bring some drinks over and just plop your ass in our baby pool, come on, and we'll
I'll get drunk in the baby pool, sing in the karaoke machine. I'm gonna have
yes.
like a rave just at your
Oh,
house.
we're gonna have a great summer. Yeah, my daughter got a karaoke machine for her for her birthday, and we set it up today. I don't know if her or my husband is having more fun. Like the two of them, probably for like an hour straight, just like saying a bunch of songs, and then they're doing a bunch of duets, so they're passing the mic back and
You're
forth.
gonna have to get 2 mics.
I know, right? Well, Millie's still kind of making out with the mic, so nobody probably wants to use that
Yeah,
mic.
that's like the Millie designated mic.
Yeah, like that's yours. Everyone else will have this other one since you don't understand how a microphone works. And you're like, I have to lick it. And like, no, you don't. You
Nope.
just hold it right up here. Oh yeah. So yeah, we're in it for a great summer with the pool parties and the karaoke
Hmm.
and we'll
You got
see
the
what else we
party
can get
house.
into. Yeah. You guys heard last week's episode? We got, a house, I keep wanting to say dollhouse. It's not like a playhouse,
Hmm.
outside so we can hide in there when we need some shade,
Hmm.
all kinds of options
Perfect.
here.
It's perfect. It's all gonna work out.
All right. And if you guys remember from last week's episode, we are double recording tonight. So it's 10 p.m. and we've already talked for an hour and a half. And I don't think we have anything else to say before we get
No,
started on
we have
this
no
episode.
updates, nothing else. We'll just go ahead and get into this one, and it's a pretty sad one.
It's really sad. I'm sorry, guys.
So, our sources for this week are NBC for Washington called, like an episode called 10 Years Later, whereas Relisha Rudd, missingkids.org, an NBC Washington article, the FBI archives of like the Washington Post, the Voices for Justice podcast, and a WAMU 88.5 radio segment called Through the Cracks. So, 8-year-old Relisha Rudd was last seen on March 1st, 2014, in Washington, D.C., and no one looked for Relisha until after she'd been missing for weeks. She has not been seen since that day, but a missing persons case remains open still. So, Relisha was born on October 29th, 2005, in Washington, D.C., to Shamika Young and Irving Rudd. Her mother, Shamika, spent time in multiple homeless shelters throughout her childhood and was placed into foster care at the age of 6. Her own mother was in and out of her life, but she remained in foster care until she aged out of the system at 18 years old, and Relisha was born about a year later. So, Relisha's father, Irving, had been convicted of involuntary manslaughter for the death of his 17-month-old daughter in 1992. She had been beaten and thrown against a table and later died from her injuries, which is just so, so sad. Like,
So horrific. Like, ugh.
I
Like
feel
a
like this
baby, a
whole,
baby.
a literal baby, 17 months old, like, baby, baby.
Yeah.
And I just feel like this episode just shows, like, the cycles of,
Yeah,
you know,
100%.
like, Shamika was kind of failed by her parents,
Hmm.
Relisha kind of being failed in another way, the
Just, yeah,
cycles of, yeah,
generational trauma and abuse
yeah.
and yeah.
So Shamika and Irving moved into an apartment complex in Edgewood after Relisha was born, and they soon had a son as well. And in July of 2007, Child and Family Services received their first report about this family. Relisha had some suspicious injuries, and they noted inadequate food and supervision for her and her newborn brother. The case was not substantiated, and the children remained in their parents' care. And later that year, the family moved out of the apartment complex after a shooting injured 7 people. Not long after that, Shamika and Irving split up, and Shamika got together with Antonio Wheeler, and Shamika and Antonio had 2 sons together. So in April of 2010, Child and Family Services received another report that one of Relisha's younger brothers was not getting the required medical attention following a surgery. During this investigation, it was noted that the family lived in environmentally unsafe conditions with debris and cigarette butts all over the apartment. And it was also noted that the children were bathing without supervision, which is extremely dangerous because I know bathwater is short, but you can still drown.
Yeah, especially because at this point there are 4 children under the age of 5. So Relisha is the oldest and is only 5 years old. So if 4 children under the age of 5 are all bathing without supervision, that's not okay.
And like, I mean, you learn, but like kids that age don't know how to wash themselves. Like, you don't
Hmm.
know, like, I mean, you know, but you're not like,
You can't get yourself clean. Yeah.
yeah,
Personal hygiene is a learned skill that
yeah.
you
It
usually
it
don't have
takes a
at
while.
2 years
Yeah.
old. Yeah.
So the children remained in Shamika's care after this report, and the family bounced around to many different apartments over the next couple of years, and they were often evicted. At least 5 of Shamika's previous landlords tried to take legal action against her for breaking contracts, and the family ended up living in a hotel for 3 months before moving into the DC General Family Shelter. So the DC General Family Shelter was never intended to like permanently house anyone. It's supposed to kind of just be, you know, a temporary shelter for the increasing unhoused population in DC. And it actually used to be the DC General Hospital. So it wasn't like a designed building for
Yeah.
living. It was like, we'll turn this house into a temporary shelter, you
Hmm.
know.
Like we need something because this problem is
Hmm.
getting a lot worse here. Like, okay, this is going to be a temporary solution.
Hmm. So the shelter provided programming to support the families living there and provide them with additional assistance to get back on their feet. So families had to participate and had to be at the shelter every evening in order to continue living there. The city paid a nonprofit called the Community Partnership for the Prevention of Homelessness, known as TCP, 13 million a year to run the DC General Family Shelter, which is quite a bit of money.
It is, but as we get it more into it, it seems like maybe it wasn't enough. So,
Yeah, yeah. True, true. So in 2013, this charity brought in almost $100 million and had 2.5 million of that unspent. So a large portion of their income went to their programming. Roughly 800 people were housed in this shelter, and many argued that the city wasn't paying TCP enough to fully fund this shelter as the conditions were atrocious. So whether it wasn't enough to fully fund it, someone's misusing that money,
yeah.
which is very possible as well.
Very much so. But also if you think about like this, organization is receiving like $100 million from all their various sources, and only 13 of that is like from the city for this shelter
Yeah.
that has so many people, and it's supposed to be a very intensive type program.
Hmm.
It's not just like, oh, like it's just a shelter, show up when you want, you have somewhere safe to
Yeah,
sleep.
you're
It's like it's
supposed to
really
have.
supposed to be like we have social workers here to help you. We have all of these like programs to like, really assist you, but they
Yeah.
either, like I said, it wasn't enough money or they weren't using it correctly, or there's lots of other things that we'll learn about this organization
Hmm.
not doing. So,
Yeah. So the shelter was infested with bugs and pests, including bed bugs, mice, and raccoons. And 30 people were hospitalized for bites received while at the shelter. Not just medically treated, but hospitalized. So bad, very
yeah.
bad.
Yeah.
One couple living in the shelter said they slept in shifts so cockroaches wouldn't crawl on their 5-month-old baby. Trash and dirty diapers were everywhere, and there were several reports of sexual assaults, staff taking photos of residents in the showers, and staff paying residents for sex. Obviously, this conduct went against the supposed regulations of the shelter. So there's regulations that are not being followed,
Hmm.
which is just taking advantage of people who were already in a pretty shitty position.
Yep.
So, for obvious reasons, Relisha did not like living at the shelter and tried to find other places to be. So, she would stay at school as long as possible at the end of the day to avoid going home to the shelter. And she would also fake asthma attacks to go stay at her Aunt Ashley's house. And Relisha loved singing and dancing and playing dress up as a princess. And she was in the Girl Scouts and cheerleading, and she still slept with her teddy bear named Baby. Her cheerleading coach, Shannon Smith, was an important adult in Relisha's life, and Shannon noticed that Relisha would come to school hungry and with dirty hair and clothes, and so she would take her to the bathroom before school in the mornings to like kind of help her clean up. And Shannon noticed that Relisha and her brother were often picked up late from school. So one time she called Shamika to see like if she could give the children a ride home, and Shamika hung up on her. She then called the school and told them to have Relisha and her brother walk home. So, someone being kind, offering to do these kids a ride home, and she's like, fuck you, tell them to walk,
Yeah.
basically.
And at this point, Relisha's like somewhere between 6 and 7 years old. Her brother is
Hmm.
like a year younger, and they live in DC. And she's like, no, they could
Yeah,
just walk home.
yeah, yeah. So, Relisha's elementary school closed in the fall of 2013, so she had to move to another school, and Shannon did not work at the new school. Relisha lost the support she had from her. And at her new school, the parents' unemployment rate was almost 10% higher than the rest of the state. And Relisha was one of 55 unhoused children at the school and one of 600 children living at the DC General Family Shelter. So Relisha had other adults in her life that would spend a lot of time with her, like her Aunt Ashley and her grandmother Melissa. And she even had a cat named Missy at Melissa's house. And when she wasn't staying at the shelter, Relisha was often passed around to different family members' houses. And in 2013, Relisha started spending a lot of time with 51-year-old Khalil Tatum. So Tatum was a janitor at the shelter, and Shamika would let him take Relisha for the day and often spend the night with him and his mother. Again, around this time, she's 8, right? And you're letting her go spend the night at a
Yeah.
51-year-old's house.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I
Mm.
know I'm not, I don't know people's circumstances, whatever, but like, that's
Oh, it gets
rough.
worse.
Yeah, it always does. In the words of
Mm.
Georgia Hardstark, don't worry, it gets
Yeah.
worse.
Yeah.
um, So, Shamika said she met Khalil Tatum in 2005, but Relisha's aunt and grandmother didn't meet him until the family moved into shelter in 2012. So, despite staff being forbidden from having personal relationships with the residents of the shelter, Tatum would take Relisha shopping to get her nails done and out to eat. He also took her to Disney on Ice and bought her a tablet for Christmas. And Shamika started telling family that Tatum was Relisha's godfather, and she said he was a nice guy and he didn't seem like he would do anything to harm Relisha, which, like, I get like you're just hoping like this is someone who's like trying to be a father figure to her, but like this is the exact type of scenario where most kids are in the most danger.
Hmm.
Like,
Exactly. You're just like, oh, he seemed like a nice guy. He didn't seem like he would do anything. Like,
mhm.
what? Like, yeah, lots of people seem nice.
Yeah. However, you knew this was coming. Y'all knew this was, you know, this rodeo. However, Khalil Tatum was a convicted felon who'd been charged with breaking and entering, larceny, and burglary. And he was in prison from 1993 to 2003, and again from 2004 to 2011. And after getting out of prison, Tatum married a woman named Andrea, and the couple started having problems in 2014, and she was thinking about leaving him. So In early 2014, Relisha started missing a lot of school, and Shamika told the school that Relisha was being treated by a doctor for neurological issues and provided doctor's notes for most of her absences. However, she still missed some days without doctor's notes, and on February 25th, the school scheduled a parent-teacher conference after Relisha's fifth unexcused absence for the school year, and that conference was scheduled for March 6th. So on February 26th, Relisha is seen on surveillance footage with Khalil Tatum at the Holiday Inn Express in Northeast DC. They were walking together inside the hotel and carrying what looked like plastic shopping bags. And Relisha was wearing pink boots and a purple Helly Hansen jacket with white stripes. And this is the last known footage of Relisha Rudd. On March 1st, Relisha's aunt, Ashley, saw Relisha and her three brothers in the morning and did her hair in like pink and white bows. She said Relisha wasn't feeling well, so she stayed home from school. And Shamika picked her up and they took a video together that was posted to Shamika's Instagram before they left Ashley's house. Um, Shamika didn't have Relisha for long before dropping her off at her grandmother Melissa's house. And later that day, Relisha is seen with Tatum at a Days Inn at New York Avenue Northeast. And that's the last known sighting of Relisha Rudd, which is also like going to a lot of hotels together
Yeah. Like, why is your 8-year-old daughter at multiple hotels in a week
with a
with a 51-year-old
51-year-old
man?
man. Yeah. So neither Shamika or Melissa will admit to dropping Relisha off with Tatum or being the one with Relisha when Tatum picked her up. The next day, Khalil Tatum purchased a pack of 42-gallon contractor bags, lime, and a shovel. And on March 5th, Shamika attends the parent-teacher conference with Relisha's school and reiterates that Relisha is under a doctor's care for neurological problems, and the school offers to provide the family additional services. So they're like, if you need anything, need any help, we're here to help, we're here to support
Hmm.
you. And on March 10th, the school officials called the doctor's phone number on the notes Shamika has been providing and says they'll need additional documentation for Relisha's continued unexcused absences. And the doctor on the phone says that won't be a problem and that Relisha is scheduled to be discharged from his care by the end of the week. So he's like, all right, by the end of the week, like, she should be fine. And on March 12th, Melissa calls Tatum and asked him to fix the tablet he got for Relisha for Christmas. And then she asks him like if he has Relisha. So it's like, hey, can you fix this tablet? By the way, have you seen my daughter?
Yeah, like, also, is she with you? Like, okay.
Yeah. He said he didn't have her and asked Melissa if she knew where he was right then. Melissa knew Tatum was supposed to be leaving soon for a trip to Atlanta, so she told him he should be at home getting ready for his trip. And Tatum told Melissa that they were already in Atlanta. And she was like, who's we? And he said him, his wife, Andrea, Relisha, his daughter, and his granddaughter. So he said he didn't have her and now says she's with
Yeah.
them in Atlanta, which is
Yeah.
very far away from DC.
A little confusing.
Hmm. He said they were at some kind of family or medical retreat, and Melissa asked Tatum to have Relisha home by March 16th for a birthday party. So she's like, well, since she's down there, have fun. Can you just bring her back in 4 days? Like, okay.
Yeah.
And Melissa asked Shamika if she knew that Relisha was out of town with Tatum, and Shamika said Tatum asked to take Relisha to Atlanta, but she told him no. However, she didn't make a police report.
Yeah. Like, she just finds out that, I mean, one, she hasn't known where her daughter's been. And then it's like,
Hmm.
oh, she's out of town with this man who I told her not to take her out of town. But okay,
I
no further
won't charge
action.
him with kidnapping. It's fine.
No. Yeah. On March 13th, Relisha hit 10 unexcused absences from school, and Shamika was reported to Child and Family Services for neglect, per like the school's policy. On March 16th, Tatum did not bring Relisha home as he had promised Melissa. And on March 17th, Melissa called Tatum and he said he was back in town and had taken Relisha to school that morning. However, Relisha was not at school. On March 19th, Child and Family Services called Relisha's doctor and they set up a meeting at the shelter where the family was living. So a social worker from the school accompanied the Child and Family Services agent to the shelter. So they arrive and they tell the front desk like they have a meeting with a Dr. Tatum, who is the name on these doctor's notes that they've been
Oh,
receiving. Yep.
Okay.
Uh-huh. So the shelter worker tells them that there's no Dr. Tatum there, but that their janitor's last name was Tatum, and he had left his shift abruptly earlier that day. So the social worker and child and family services agent called Shamika, who finally admitted that she has not seen or talked to her daughter in 18 days. Her 8-year-old daughter, she has had no contact with in 18 fucking days and has not reported this anywhere.
Which is just insane to me.
Yeah.
Like, I know like a lot of people are like latchkey babies and stuff, but this is next level.
Yeah. And a lot of people keep pointing out like the generational trauma like we talked about at the beginning of the episode, and it's like yes, but also you are still responsible when you choose to have
Hmm.
children. Like I'm sorry, there's still a
Yeah.
line that
Yeah.
So Shamika says that she didn't have access to a phone. So like that's why she hasn't even talked to Relisha. And she's like, no, like Relisha's fine with Tatum. And she again refuses to file a police report. Even at this point, after she supposedly told him not to take her out of town, he did anyway. She's been gone for days. He didn't bring her back at the time that her grandmother asked him to bring her back. And
Hmm.
she's still not going to file a police report.
Okay, I obviously have not read the notes, your
Mhm.
part. Y'all know we don't do that. But
We like to be surprised
and
when we do.
I don't want to assume anything or make any
Mhm.
like assumptions, but does Shamika have any known like drug abuse issues?
Okay, so according to a Reddit thread that I looked at, she has a very low IQ, and maybe has some kind of developmental delay or some kind of other mental illness or something like that. But that's coming from this Reddit thread and not backed up by anything else
Okay.
that I found.
I
So,
was just wondering, like, I know someone who is very addicted to drugs and has
mhm,
children, and who I could see just
yeah,
maybe not even realizing how many days have passed or not, like
yeah,
once you're deep into addiction. And like I said, I don't want to assume anything
mhm,
like based off of like whatever,
yeah,
but I'm just trying to be like, how could you
yeah.
not be like confused? I mean, or I guess if she has a low IQ and she's being like,
That's some of the things I read in that Reddit thread was that she had a low IQ, that like maybe she was just very naive and trusting.
mm-hmm,
There's some other theories like we'll get into here in a minute, but
yeah.
nothing like official that I read about a reported history of drug use, which I feel like would have been made public at this point with all the services they were receiving
That's what I was
too,
saying.
you know,
Like so
like
many child and family services coming up.
yeah,
Also staying at the shelter. I know the shelter wasn't following a lot of regulations, but a lot of times that's like
yeah.
a requirement for staying there. Like I didn't want to assume. I'm just
Hmm.
trying to like make sense of nonsense. And I'm like, it has
Trying
to
to
be,
rationalize how,
yeah, like
yeah.
it has to be something outside of her that's
Yeah. And
making her
nothing that
act
I
this way.
found, yeah. And nothing that I found in like the Child and Family Services reports like noted any kind of like drug use or drug paraphernalia or
Hmm.
anything. And like they noted lots of other like unsanitary living conditions and things like that that I feel like if drug use was an issue that it would have been
Yeah, with how
brought
dirty
up
it
at some
was, like
point.
that would have been there too. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So at this point, Shamika's husband, Antonio, called Tatum and told him police were looking for him, and he told Antonio he would bring Relisha back. So at this point, like the family is still in contact with Khalil Tatum, and he's just like, yeah, I'm gonna bring her back. I'm gonna bring her back. Or I already dropped her off at school, which we know he didn't. The police called Khalil Tatum at 9:30 p.m., but he didn't answer, and they would later learn that Tatum's phone was shut off earlier that day and then never used again. So around 10 p.m. that night, Tatum checks into the Red Roof Inn in Prince George County, Maryland, with his wife and three other unknown people. Surveillance footage captures them, and their key card opens their hotel room at 10:13 p.m. The three unknown people then leave in a vehicle shortly after that, so Khalil and his wife are still inside. At 5:40 a.m., one of those people is seen on surveillance footage going back to the hotel. So he later said that Tatum wouldn't like let him inside the hotel room, but he did see his wife Andrea sleeping in the bed. And then he picked up Tatum and dropped him off at the Southern Avenue Metro Station in Suitland, Maryland. So this person, along with the other two unknown individuals, were identified and questioned by police, but their identities have never been released. So that's how we have
Mm-hmm.
like their information, but that's why they're called the unknown people because we don't
Yeah.
know anything else about them. But they have been questioned. At 8 a.m., officers respond to a call at the Red Roof Inn about a vehicle believed to be related to Relisha's case. So they learn from the front desk that Tatum is still checked in. So they knock on his door, but there's no answer. So they get a master key from the hotel and enter the room. Inside the hotel room, they find the body of Angela Tatum with a single gunshot wound to the head. There are no signs of a struggle, and at this point, an arrest warrant is issued for Khalil Tatum for his wife's murder, and also a BOLO, or be on the lookout, is issued for Relisha Rudd. Now, the Metro DC police say they issued an Amber Alert immediately, but police officers in North Carolina and New York say no Amber Alert was initially activated because they weren't notified of it. And obviously, like, that's the whole point of an Amber Alert is for everyone
Mm-hmm.
to be aware of this missing child.
Yeah.
So they're like, no, like you didn't. Um, and Amber Alert coordinator Robert Hoover, who worked for the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, said there was no active Amber Alerts outside of DC. And maybe it was like a misunderstanding about how Amber Alerts work, or like that it's an official like Amber
Mm-hmm.
Alert process and not just like a missing child. Like he's like,
Yeah, but
maybe
this
you
is
thought you did
like
it.
this is not like when Amber Alerts were first around. Like I'm
This is
sure,
2014.
yeah,
Like,
like this is well into the use, and especially DC, it is a major city.
yeah.
You should know how to use that. DC is a major city. It can be a major hub. You can get so
Mm-hmm.
many places.
Yeah,
Like, come on now.
exactly. Exactly. So finally, an Amber Alert was officially issued later that day on March 20th, which is 20 days after the last known sighting of Relisha. So police gathered the previously mentioned surveillance footage over the next few days and continued searching for Relisha and Tatum. The searches are targeted to areas where Tatum is known to frequent instead of like widespread searches throughout the city. The FBI is called in, and rewards are issued for information about both Relisha's return and also Tatum's arrest. Billboards are put up from Georgia to Maryland with photos of both Relisha and Khalil Tatum, notifying the public that Relisha is likely in danger. A search of Tatum's home is conducted, and among items seized are children's clothing and shoes, several cell phones, two passports, and a photo of Relisha. On March 27th, the DC police chief says that she believes they are now looking at a recovery mission for Relisha and not a rescue mission. The search does become heavily focused on Kenilworth Park and Aquatic Gardens. However, this park is huge, spanning 700 acres, including heavily wooded areas and several bodies of water that all lead to the Anacostia River. The Anacostia River is 8.5 miles long and runs through Maryland and DC. So again, it's just like this giant, vast area. More than 100 officers, firefighters, and cadets searched the park, including emptying the contents of all trash cans. So on either March 31st or April 1st, sources differ. So I don't know if it was like a around midnight kind of thing or it was just reported differently. But on one of those days, the body of Khalil Tatum was found in a shed in the park. So he did die of an apparent self-inflicted gunshot wound. The gun used to kill Khalil was also determined to be the same gun used to murder Andrea. So her case was closed, assuming that her husband had murdered her. And
Mm-hmm.
the search for Relisha continued. On April 8th, DC's mayor ordered an investigation into Relisha's disappearance, and the report was released in August and stated that the government did everything they could and nothing could have prevented what happened to Relisha. However, as we talked about, Relisha's family was involved in multiple government agencies. She was enrolled
Mm-hmm.
in public school. She was living in a city funded family shelter. She had child and family services involvement multiple times. Like, there's so many things involved with this family, and they're just like, well,
Yeah.
no, nobody could have done anything. She wasn't seen for 20 fucking days. Like,
Like my thing is too with the shelter is like everyone has to be there back at the end of the night. How are you not realizing
Uh-huh.
a kid's missing for this long? Also, staff members and shelter residents are not supposed to be like having a relationship. And it doesn't
Mm-hmm.
sound like Tatum and Relisha, like that wasn't hidden. It didn't seem
Exactly.
like many people knew that
Mm-hmm.
was a thing. So like
Yep.
how can you say the government didn't fail
Mm-hmm.
her? And I get it. Social workers can be so overworked, overrun,
Mm-hmm.
but like
Absolutely.
so many different spots
Yeah.
that she just slipped right through.
That's the thing. Like, it's so many people that failed this child. It's not just
Hmm.
like, oh, it was this one social worker that missed this one thing and then something happened. It's like, no, they were involved in so much. And
Yeah. And it is too with like, who knows how much people are seeing in DC with social workers of like,
yeah.
there weren't enough qualifications to hit to step in compare,
Mm-hmm.
like obviously these are horrible conditions, but
Mm-hmm.
at the same time, it's not hitting that threshold that
Yeah.
we might see somewhere else. So,
Mm-hmm.
but it's just like when that many times it's called, when you're in a shelter, like in a publicly, like a city funded shelter, like
Yeah.
how?
And we'll get into some of those things here in just a minute because, like Courtney said, we don't read each other's notes. So there's like two sentences down that will
Oopsie.
address some of this. But,
Oopsie.
and this report also revealed that there was no recent assessment on file of how Relicious family was functioning inside the shelter. So, like, again, this shelter is supposed to be like heavily like programmed and like there's lots of stuff going on. Like, they have social workers, they have more than just like a place to sleep, but there's no recent report that like talks about how the family is doing. And as Courtney said, the staff at the shelter were supposed to do nightly head counts to make sure everyone was inside the shelter. But after this came out, they found out that the staff would just ask, like at each door, like they would like open the door, whoever answered, hey, how many people are inside? Okay, great. They would write that down versus going inside and actually counting the number of people, which if that had happened, there would be a record starting back in early March or maybe even late February, it sounds like, that
Hmm.
Relisha was not at the shelter. So, like, someone
Yeah.
other than her parents could have intervened because obviously her parents were aware of this and did not do anything. But if someone else was aware immediately that several days in a row, Relisha was not at this shelter,
Yeah.
um, we'll get to the school in a minute. But so also a clause in the agreement between the city and the nonprofit organization, the Community Partnership for the Prevention of Homelessness, stated that all employees working at the shelter were to have a background check, and any employee with a felony would not be allowed to be employed.
I was wondering about this as well when I was going on my
Uh-huh.
tangent because I was like, he's around children. I mean, obviously he's not
Yep.
like a sex offender, but like you're around like people in need and stuff and like children where people are sleeping and showering and I feel
Uh-huh.
like anything shouldn't be
Robbery and burglary, and you're a
and
janitor at a shelter?
yeah, where you can just
Mm-hmm.
rob from people.
Yep. Yep. So obviously, like the city required that this organization conduct background checks, and they either did not or it did not matter. Um, because as we said, Khalil Tatum was a convicted felon who had spent almost 20 years in prison and had only been out of prison a few years, like when Relisha started spending time with him. Like, it's not like it was, oh, I was in prison for, 5 years, 40 years ago, and now, no, like he was only out a couple of years and was in
Yeah.
for a combined, like, I think it was like 18 years or something.
Hmm.
Also, at least four TCP staff members were fired between 2010 and 2014 for violating the shelter's policies against having personal relationships with residents. So it wasn't the first time that this had happened, but
And
obviously
you
it's still
think they
going
would be
on.
more on the lookout for that kind of thing. Like
Mm-hmm.
hire better
You would
people.
think.
Jesus
Yeah.
Christ.
So this report that came out suggested 26 total policy changes for both the school and the shelter to prevent something like this from happening again. So the school said that their hands were tied because they did everything they were supposed to. So they contacted Shamika after the first few unexcused absences, which again, she's like filing all these doctor's notes. They then filed a report with Child and Family Services after the 10th unexcused absence per their policy. And, according to them, Shamika was producing these legitimate looking doctor's notes, so they had no reason to intervene sooner. I don't know.
I mean, I don't know.
I don't know.
I can see either side of that one, I guess, because
Yeah.
it's again kind of back to what we were saying about. like the Child and Family Services of like by policy, could they not? They're like, we can't
Hmm.
do much more, but you would think they would have asked about all these doctor's notes. A little, it's like, is she okay? Like, she's
Right?
very sick, clearly. Like, what can we do
Yeah.
to help? Like,
And like we mentioned too, Relisha was one of 55 unhoused students at this
yeah,
elementary school. So like was their truancy, social worker, everything else team just stretched so thin?
yeah.
Yeah. So the shelter updated their policies, supposedly, and all of Relisha's siblings were placed into foster care. So as of 2021, they were still in foster care, but Antonio was interviewed in 2024 saying that he had custody of his children back. So that's according to him. I don't know if there's, don't have any way to like substantiate that. And then Shamika also had the other child with Irving, Relisha's father. So
Mm-hmm.
I don't know where that child is.
Yeah.
In 2016, the Relisha Rudd law was proposed to make it illegal for a parent to not report their child missing, but the law did not pass for some reason.
Interesting.
Yeah. In 2017, Relisha's family appeared on the Steve Wilkos Show, which is a spinoff of the Jerry Springer Show, if you're not familiar with it, and just to give you a little bit of context of what that show is like, and her family is going on it after her disappearance. And on this show, Shamika said she didn't think Khalil Tatum shot himself because there were two gunshot wounds. So we weren't able to find anything anywhere else to like substantiate the two gunshot wounds. But we also know it's not uncommon for someone who dies by suicide to shoot themselves twice because they flinched the first time. So like it's
Mm-hmm.
not unheard of. Um, Also on the show, everyone in the family except Shamika took a lie detector test, but we know the reliability of lie detector tests. And also, like, this is a scripted show that is trying to create drama. So we don't know how much of that was like,
Yeah.
oh, hey, we're going to have you refuse and you all take it and all this stuff.
Yeah.
I just
Because
feel like the fact that
Jerry,
they were even on that show says something.
because like
Like,
it's Jerry Springer who's like, you're not the father. Is that Maury?
I think that's Maury, but it's kind of the
It's
same
like the
like
same
type. It's a
thing.
family
It's
drama show of
yeah,
like
it's
people
very
yelling at each other and
yelling at each other and like trying to do like a shock factor. Like, okay, now we're
yeah,
gonna bring out so and so, and they're gonna start
yeah,
fighting. And
exactly.
it's not the show you go on when
When your
your
child's
kid is
missing.
missing.
Exactly. Exactly. The family did go back on the show again in 2021, and at this time, like on this episode, Antonio and Shamika are just like blaming each other for Relisha's disappearance. So, haven't seen the episode, so I don't know exactly in what context, but that's the
I mean,
information I
yeah, I
found
mean, I think
online.
they could both take a little bit of blame here. I think
I
both of them could be like,
think
a little
everyone can be
bit.
blamed in this situation.
I
Like they're,
mean, yeah, I
ugh,
mean, you're like, my stepdaughter's spending a lot of time with a 51-year-old. You're not like,
yeah. Which it was also interesting because in that 2024 interview that I mentioned, because the first source in this episode, the NBC4 Washington, like 10 years later. So that came out in March of this year, because again, it has been 10 years since Relisha disappeared. So Antonio was interviewed on that segment. And one of like the interviewers asked him, like, why hasn't anyone in Relisha's family been charged? And he was like, I don't know. Why hasn't the family been charged? I'm not her family. I was just married to her mom. I'm not her family. So it's kind of weird.
yeah.
So I'm like, you
It
were her
feels like a
stepdad.
very much like he didn't really consider her other two kids like his kids. Like he's like, I'll take care of
Yeah.
my kids, but like you figure that out with those. Like those aren't my
Yeah.
kids versus like a welcoming stepfather. But I don't know. I still feel
Because, like,
like,
yeah, because I was like, is it that kind of situation where he's just like, I didn't want anything to do with her? Or is he trying to be like, you should charge the family, but not me?
yeah,
I didn't know anything to do with it. I
like
don't know. I
and
don't know.
maybe that's the way he's coping is to be like, well, it wasn't actually my kid. So
Yeah. So the DC General Family Shelter was shut down in 2018, so that is no
shocking.
longer operating. And every year, a DC nonprofit called DC's Missing Voice brings together the community and the Metropolitan Police Department on July 11th for Relisha Rudd Remembrance Day. So the community honors her on this day and shares her missing posters to demonstrate that they will never stop searching for her. And they have also coined March 1st Relisha Rudd Awareness Day. Police have followed up on thousands of tips related to Relisha's disappearance over the last decade, but none of them have led to finding Relisha. Obviously, many people believe that Relisha was killed before Tatum died by suicide, but a lot of people do wonder if she was trafficked by Tatum and may still be alive somewhere. In that Reddit thread, a lot of people believe that Shamika is involved and either sold Relisha to Tatum or
Mm-hmm.
was in some way involved in her being with Tatum and then whatever happened to her
Mm-hmm.
after. Again, we don't have anything to prove that. Those are just Reddit theories, not saying these are our theories, but that information is out there. If you have any information about the disappearance of Relisha Rudd, please contact the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children at 1-800-THE-LOST or the Washington Metropolitan Police Department at 202-265-9100. And that is a very tragic disappearance of Relisha Rudd, who is still missing 10 years later.
Which is so sad. And
Yeah.
obviously, I don't know. It's my own personal theory, but I don't think she was trafficked
Yeah.
personally. I feel like why would Tatum murder his wife and then die by suicide if he just, not to say just trafficked her, but
No,
like
I know what you mean.
if she was alive somewhere, like you, and you were feeling guilty, you could be like, go to the police and be
You
like,
could figure something
hey,
out.
I'm sorry, like this happened. Like, let me
Hmm.
tell you what happened versus something happening to her and like you feel guilty about that kind of thing.
And like the last day Relisha was seen, he's seen purchasing huge
Yeah.
trash bags,
Lime, a
lime,
shovel.
and a shovel. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's just my own personal theory. Again, no
Hmm.
bearing to that. To me, that feels like the sign of someone who's guilty of
Yeah.
murdering a little girl and not just trafficking. No, I don't mean to say just trafficking her
No, I
like
know what
that
you mean.
constantly, but
Like you
I
said,
just feel like if she
there's
was alive,
a
like,
reverse if that's
yeah,
what happened, and if you're feeling guilty that that's what happened, there's something that you could attempt to do in that
especially
situation.
because like if you know she's alive and she's in this horrible situation, then why die by suicide? Because
Hmm.
then you can't help her. Like you're just making
Yeah.
it worse. So
I think
I don't
that's
know.
a lot of people's like their one hope that like, well, maybe she's
Mhm.
alive and this would be how she would still be alive. You know what I mean? Because obviously like
Which,
he's dead, so it's not like she's still out there with him. So then maybe like they're like this is their hope that
yeah,
maybe she's
which
still
I
alive
definitely
somewhere.
understand, but that's also a really shitty life and a lot of
Yeah.
trauma. Like, I always hope someone isn't murdered, but like
Hmm.
being like human trafficked is also
Yeah.
kind of a living hell from
Yeah.
what we've heard. So,
And if she is alive, she would be turning 18 this year. So,
mm,
yeah, just like
so
we said,
sad.
everyone in this child's life failed her. Like,
Hmm.
and the fact that there were so many people involved, like, I feel like when you hear of these cases, it's a child who like was under the radar and like people didn't know that they existed. And so like they're missing school because, no one knows that they're here, things like that. But like this child was involved by so many people who were like continually checking in because they're like, something's not right here, but just like it wasn't enough. And
Hmm.
like we said, a lot of people try to rationalize, I don't know the best word, but they point to all this generational trauma that we talked about at the beginning of the episode with like how Shamika grew up and then her low IQ and these other things. But I'm just like, but you didn't see your 8-year-old daughter for 3 weeks. Like, I'm sorry, there is nothing in the entire world that can justify
Yeah.
that. Like,
But even so, like, if it is low IQ, generational trauma, like, what about her husband, the stepdad? What
yeah.
about her sister? What about her mom? Like, Relisha's grandmother? Like,
Mhm.
which obviously Relisha's grandmother wasn't winning any parenting awards either, but like still sometimes, they say like when a grandkid comes along, it kind of like flips you a little bit to be like, oh, I need
Hmm.
to do this. Like, so it's just like, how is everyone in this life just being like, don't know
Yeah.
where she is? Like, how do you find out that possibly this guy took your daughter? I mean, DC to Washington, I mean, DC to Atlanta, it's
Yeah.
probably like 10, 12 hours.
Mm,
Washington,
I
DC
think
is
it's
about seven and a half
more.
from here, and Atlanta's about 3.5 from here.
Yeah, but you go like this way. Well, let's see.
But I still feel like you would just go up like 75. I don't really know what the offshoot would be.
Oh yeah, 10.5 hours. 637 miles.
Yeah. Like
Yeah.
multiple states away, Like,
And also, like, it's very sad that this case isn't super well known outside of DC.
mm,
Like everything that I looked at said like it's still very much, talked about in DC, but everywhere else, like, would it be a very different story if this was a white 8-year-old girl,
yeah.
or a 8-year-old girl who went missing under different circumstances that didn't
Hmm.
have her parents involved, not involved, like,
Yeah.
which is obviously horrific but the actions of the other people in her life should not influence her story being shared
Yeah.
in the way that it
She's
would if it
still a
was a different
missing little girl,
circumstance. Yeah.
no matter like what happened. So, very,
Well,
very sad.
hopefully we can leave you on a little bit of a
I
positive
don't
note
know. I'm
because
just pretty depressed right now.
sorry, this was a really bad one. Courtney, what's your perk of the week?
So my perk of the week is, like we said, we're double recording, and I mean, a pretty huge perk of the week last week. So, my perk of the week is that I just got so many new books for my birthday, and I'm so excited. Like, there's nothing better than
Yes.
getting a book that's like on your TBR and like being able to read it and not having to wait on a hold from the library or be on a time frame of 3 weeks to read your book.
Hmm.
It's so nice. I love getting new books. It's so exciting. And I've kind of tried to put myself on like not buying any more new books because I have so many, but like I get so excited around like birthday, Christmas, and I'm like, new books, new books.
Yep.
So
It is a
the
very
best
exciting
time.
time.
Yes, so I'm very excited. I think I've already picked out which one I'm taking on my trip. At this
Hmm.
point, you're listening to this. I have been to the trip. We have been to CrimeCon. All that's done. So
Wow, that is
crazy.
crazy. That is,
Yeah.
wow. Yeah, that's true.
So,
That's true.
but I'm not going to pull a Jacqueline and do a preemptive perk of the week because that
Nope,
never works out well. So we're talking
never.
about the books I got for my birthday.
Next week, we'll tell you about anything else that happened during that
Yes.
week.
Yes, we will. But yeah, so that is my perk of the week. Jacqueline, what is your perk of the week?
So, my perk of the week is that we did not anticipate, but ended up buying a new car this weekend. So that was super
Yay!
exciting. Stressful because cars are expensive, but my
Hmm.
old car was no longer reliable and had been that way for many months.
And a money pit.
Yes, exactly. We just throwing money into it, kept thinking it was fixed, and then it wasn't, and it was just a nightmare. And then, like I told Courtney the last time, I'm like, the next time this car does not start, I'm buying a new fucking car because I'm so over this. And it was like a
Yeah.
14-year-old car. I mean, it had a ton of miles on it. Like, it was a clunker when we bought it because we totaled out our last car and we're like, let's just get us something to tide us over that we don't have to pay
Hmm.
out of pocket for. We'll just use the insurance money and get something similar. And it just was a disaster. So like we've only had it for like 3.5, 4 years.
Yeah.
Um, and it's, never been great to us, but I guess it got us many places, but not always
It got
where
you
we
where it needed to. It served its purpose.
Yes, yes.
Not
But
didn't do
the
great at it, but it served its purpose.
yeah, exactly. It's just a very mediocre, most of the
Yeah.
time it got the job done.
Yeah. One
But
time, like I had to drive Jacqueline's car and I was like, does it normally make this noise? Is this, did I hit something? Did I hit somebody back there?
Yeah, I have been drinking. So Courtney was driving my car and I was talking with someone else in the car. And Courtney was like, hold on, stop talking for a minute. Is that noise normal? And I was like, yeah. So she's like, okay, continue on.
Okay. I just needed to double check really quick.
Any slight bump in the road, there probably didn't even need to be a bump, and a perfectly smooth road. It just sounded like the back end was gonna fall
Yeah,
off.
it definitely
Like,
did. And I was like, oh God, did I hit something? Did I fuck
in
up
the
her
last
car?
like couple of months, the like power locks stopped working, so like we couldn't use those at all. It was just
A
plenty of
disaster.
issues.
Yeah.
But the worst issue was Saturday morning, as last week we talked about. We had my daughter's birthday party, and Andrew goes to leave the house. We're gonna split up. He's gonna get the food. I'm gonna go to the park and decorate, all this stuff. We're like running right on time, and then the car won't fucking start. And I was like, I'm done. I'm done. I'm done. So we
Hmm.
went car shopping after that birthday party, after
Yep.
Courtney saved the day by picking up the food, which I told her she's now brought the food to two-thirds of my daughter's birthday party.
So every other, it's like a tradition
Yes.
now, you know?
So hopefully next year we'll take care of it. The fifth one is all you, okay?
All me.
Just go ahead and plan it now. Um, so yeah, so I talked last week about what a long weekend it was, and that was another part of the long weekend that, car shopping takes a long time, and then car buying takes a long time, and
Hmm.
just a whole process. But we have a lovely new Honda Pilot, and it's got all the fun little features. I mean, it's still like 6 years old. I say new, 6 years old,
Yeah.
but it's
I think
it's
that's
new
the
to
same
us.
year as like our car, but I'm like, it's
Yeah.
still new. She's new
It's
enough.
very new. Like it's got like 60,000 miles on it. I was like, this baby's brand new. She's fresh
Yeah.
off the lot. Like,
Yeah, she's just getting started. She's just
exactly.
hit her prime.
Especially for a Honda. I'm like, knock on wood, we're
Hmm.
gonna be together a long time, baby girl. I
Yeah.
hope. So, but yeah, I'm very excited, and it's fun to drive, and it's again got we got Bluetooth. I got a backup camera. It's got heated seats. We got
I know.
all the fun stuff. It's
Once we
it's
got
gonna be
our
a
new
good
car that had like the bells and whistles, I was like, damn,
I
this
can't
is
go back.
luxury. This is luxury. Then I get back in my car that has like crank windows, stick shift. I like driving a stick shift, but it has like crank windows, like doesn't have
Yeah.
automatic locks, which it's good. It's a good little car, but like once you have them bells and whistles though,
Yeah.
once you just put your hand in the handle and it unlocks, you can't go
You're
back.
like, this is pretty cool. Well, today, because I drove it home when we bought it on Sunday, but like they like started it and it was all ready to go, whatever. And then today it took me a minute to start my car because it's a push button. And I'm
Hmm.
like, I pushed it and then I was like, okay, like it's on, but like I can't get my phone to connect and the AC is not working because it wasn't on. It was like in that
Yeah,
little, I don't know what the equivalent is of like the key being halfway because it doesn't have a key. But I was like, oh, you got to press the brake and then hit the
you gotta
button.
press, yeah. Yeah.
So
But it's so nice
we'll
to
figure
just
it out.
like have your keys in your purse the entire time, you know?
Yeah.
You unlock the car, you get in, you start the car, and then you lock the car, and your keys don't ever
Yep.
have to leave your purse.
I love it. And it was funny because Courtney and I went to our dance class last night and Andrew took Millie to go to the store and they took that car and this is the first time we've had like two keys to one of our cars because we usually just have one key for each one. So it's like
Hmm.
you grab the set of keys that's the car that you're taking. And I was like, I just know this man took his keys because he's like, oh, well, I'll just grab, my keys that has this one on here. And I'm like, no, I need that key. And like,
Yeah.
I literally was like, I was gathering all the trash because it was trash day. And I like ran outside and I was like, yep, sure enough, he did. I was like, get back here.
Yeah.
So I had
Come
to,
back.
and I was like, thank God I know my husband so well that like
Hmm.
it wasn't right when I was going to leave that I was like, oh my God, this fucker took the keys. Because I was like,
Yeah.
I know he's going to do this. And he
I
sure
know
enough,
he's
he
gonna do
did.
it.
So, yeah. Anyway, but that was my perk of the week. I'm sorry that was a little long-winded. Let us know your perks of the week, your vacations, your
Mhm.
books, your cars, your what you guys are doing this summer. Of course, let us know your thoughts on this case. If you are outside of DC and you're familiar with this case, let us know. I wasn't able to find, I found the Voices for Justice podcast that we referenced in the beginning, wasn't able to find a whole lot as far as like coverage of this case outside of like the DC media. So definitely let us know if you are familiar with this one, and please share it so that people everywhere else can be familiar with it too.
Yeah, definitely. And if you wouldn't mind to give us 5 stars on Apple Podcast, on Spotify, anywhere that has a rating system, if you could like and subscribe on YouTube, leave us a nice comment. It always makes our day. But in the meantime, go have a cup of coffee.
And don't commit a crime.